Hi, everyone. Professor Minglu back again today. And I want to mention that besides making videos about careers directly related to accounting, I also have a few videos that I made in the past dealing with careers in consulting and investment banking. Today, I wanted to make a YouTube video about careers in hedge funds. I invited as my special guest today a friend of mine from Santa Monica College, Professor Erik Senko. Now, Erik graduated from George Washington University and completed his MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. He has an extensive history working in the investment world and even ended up starting his own hedge fund, which is pretty cool. Although he's still a very young guy, he's now amazingly semi-retired. He teaches personal finance and investment classes part-time at both Santa Monica College and El Camino while doing volunteer work, surfing on the beach, and taking care of his two young kids. He also recently started his own YouTube channel, which I'll let him talk about more later on. Hey, Erik, thank you so much for coming to do this video with me today to introduce my students to the exciting world of hedge funds.
Well, thank you, Ming. I appreciate you asking me to be on here. It's very kind of you.
All right. Well, to start, can you let my viewers know a little bit about your background? I mean, I know you have a very extensive work history, even though you're a young guy. So can you talk about your background and also the fact that you started your own hedge fund, which it sounds like exciting stuff, right? So maybe just talk about a few of your career highlights.
Sure. So I grew up in San Diego. I was planning to actually go to law school, and I worked for a federal court, and I found it a bit boring, and I kept falling asleep when I was doing research. And I just got into commodities haphazardly through my uncle. I moved to Chicago and started working on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where they were trading cattle and hogs and lumber. I'm sure everyone's read about lumber in the past month or so, with the prices like tripling and now coming back. But back then, no one cared about lumber. And I did an MBA at the University of Chicago. I wasn't really planning on doing it, but I worked for a bank that said, hey, we'll pay for it if you want to go. So I thought, oh, okay, well, free MBA, that's all right. And I graduated in '02. So I was coming out of MBA, my MBA program right after September 11th. I actually wanted to change careers and go into management in like a manufacturing company or something like that, but I wasn't able to. So I had to stay in finance. I moved to London, where I worked for Credit Suisse as a trader, and then switched over to a hedge fund in London. Got a transfer out to Hong Kong with the same firm. And then my partner and I started our own hedge fund in Hong Kong in probably, 2011, something like that. And I left the business in 2013, more or less. I had some health issues, and that's what led me to leave the business.
Well, great. Some of my viewers may not, may not even know what a hedge fund is. So would you mind telling us in the most simplistic way possible, what is a hedge fund? Also, what is a hedge fund manager? And how is that position different from a mutual fund manager or an investment banker?
So investment banking is slightly different. An investment bank is paid by a company. Think a large company like Google or Microsoft or something like that. And they hire an investment bank to help them with all sorts of different things. Maybe they want to make an acquisition, maybe they want to raise money or issue bonds or issue stock or do something like that. So that's investment banking work. Then you have money management, which is hedge funds and mutual funds. Now there's also money management at investment banks. Those are traders. They generally trade the bank's money. A hedge fund or a mutual fund, they will trade our money or invest our money. So think you and I might have a 401k or a Roth IRA, and we give some money to Fidelity. You give Fidelity $1,000. They're a mutual fund. They take that $1,000 and they'll buy stocks with it. Or if it's a bond fund, they'll buy bonds with it. But generally, they can only buy. So that's what we also call a long only, because they only buy. Now, a hedge fund has less restrictions. You and I can give money to a hedge fund, and the hedge fund can say, okay, we're going to buy some stuff, we're going to short some stuff, we're going to buy some options, we're going to buy futures, we're going to short options, this and that. The difference is if you invest in a hedge fund, you generally have a lot more risk. Maybe a lot more, maybe only a little bit more. But if you give $1,000 to Fidelity, your mutual fund, and they lose it, you've lost $1,000. In theory, a hedge fund, you could give them $1,000, they lose it, and then they say, oh, Ming, by the way, you have to give us another $700 because we lost 1,700 of your 1,000. Now that's very rare, but it actually happened not too long ago. I think it was 2 years ago. There was a fund, I want to say they were in Atlanta or Florida or something like that, called Option Sellers. And they were trading options on natural gas. And then the natural gas market just like, I won't say blew up, but took off. And the manager lost all of their money and then some. I don't know how that ended up shaking out. But the difference is a hedge fund manager has a lot more tools at his disposal to manage money. So it's something where you need to hopefully have a much better understanding of risk because you're taking on a lot more risk. And consequently, the rewards are higher, both, or should be, both for the investor and the hedge fund manager.
Wonderful. Now that you explained what a hedge fund is, could you also talk about your position as a hedge fund manager? What is a typical day like for you working as a hedge fund manager?
So I worked primarily in London and Asia. So about 8 years in London, 5 in Asia. And Asia is a lot more fragmented. The markets open at different times, they close at different times, they may or may not have a lunch break. So everything's kind of all over the place. Asia, Australia opens at either 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. And so you want to get in 1 to 2 hours ahead of time. You check the news. Hey, we've got stocks that we're looking at. Is there any news in those stocks? Or is there news in something that we should care about? The funds I always worked for and the one in which I was a partner were merger arbitrage funds. So we dealt in companies where one company was being bought by another, for example. So you'd look at the news. Then the markets start opening from 8 a.m. And then you have Australia opens, Japan opens, Hong Kong's later, et cetera. So in Asia, it's very tricky because it's not integrated. So you're trading markets and then, okay, something's going on in Australia. And then same thing, you do that with trading and watching the news and trying to put on and take off positions. And then around 2 p.m., anywhere from 2 to 5 p.m. is when all the markets start closing. And then after that, you then have the European markets, which may or may not impact your positions, and then the US market. So you might be getting calls in the middle of the night. I mean, when I worked in London, I was probably 2 nights a week. I was up for an hour or two in the middle of the night, trading at that time Asian markets. So it's just a lot of sitting there at your desk, reacting to news or trying to get ahead of something. I guess it's probably unfair to say, but you read these books about war, and the soldiers in a war say, well, you're pretty much bored, and then scared for your life, and then bored again. So there is an element of that where you're sitting at your desk for 12 hours a day, and there's you can't be totally engaged and excited 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. So there's a bit of boredom in there as well.
Well, something else I want to ask that's kind of similar to that is, with every career, there's going to be pros and cons, right? So what are the pros and cons of being a hedge fund manager? Perhaps you can give your top 3 pros of working in that area and your top 3 cons.
Obviously, the reason a lot of people get into it is for things like money and status. And there you have the potential to make a lot of money in a relatively short time, as opposed to you kind of work your way up the corporate ladder. You might be in your 50s or 60s or something before you're making serious money. As someone in finance, you can do that much earlier. I always have my students watch the movie The Big Short. And if you remember that, I don't know, have you seen that, Ming?
No, I haven't seen The Big Short. Was that an older movie, or is it a recent
it's only
movie?
about 10 years old now, with Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell, and it's great. But Ryan Gosling's character, he I don't know how old he was, maybe mid 30s or something, but in the movie, he got a bonus of $57 million, right? There, unless you're going to be a tech, startup person, the odds of getting paid tens of millions of dollars in your early to mid 30s are pretty low. Unless you want to be like these South African brothers with the cryptocurrency exchange who disappeared with 4 billion, but that's not legitimate. So certainly the money can be good. The challenge, because since it's a business that can be very lucrative, a lot of smart people go into it. So it's not like you're not playing in the JV leagues, right? You're competing against some of the smartest people out there from all over the world. And there are a few trades where I figured something out and I was like, wow, no one else figured this out. I got this. And there are obviously people out there a lot smarter than I am, and they missed this, right? So that's what provides you opportunities. And just that, you get a feeling of satisfaction. Oh, hey, I figured this out and other people didn't. That's probably enough for the pros, I would say. The cons, it's very demanding. And it takes up a lot of your time. It takes up a lot of your mental energy. Like I said, I had health problems. I ended up actually having a brain tumor that took quite a few years to diagnose. And that's why I eventually left the business. And I just wasn't motivated by the money anymore. I didn't really earn all that much, but I was just kind of like, this isn't doing it for me. You don't contribute to the world if you do that. And I think there's a very serious argument for saying you detract. You might make the world a worse place by that. I haven't fully fleshed out that argument, but I know for a fact that you don't make the world a better place by doing this. Yeah, it's demanding. Again, it's very competitive. I think that's a pro, but it's also a con as well. I don't have the same competition as a professor, thank goodness, because Ming, you're very smart and very dedicated and stuff like that. And if I had to, really compete against you all the time, I don't know how well I'd stack up. So yeah, I'd say those are the major pros and cons that come to mind.
I would say, in terms of helping the world, I think the stuff that you learned while you're working in that field, you're able to now bring it back as a professor to teach students about, economics and how the world works. And later on, I'll ask you, I'll have, talk to you about your YouTube channel, right? Where you're sharing some of the stuff you learned while you were working, now educating your students. But before we get to that question, I want to ask you something else. And that is, maybe there are some viewers or my students watching this video and they say, hey, you know what? I'm just really, I just really want to go into this field, into hedge funds. I really care about status. I really care about earning a lot of money, or I really want to be in a competitive environment. So for those students or viewers who do want to become a hedge fund manager, what do they have to do right now to prepare themselves to go into this field? I especially want to know how much accounting they need to know, right? As someone who's an accounting teacher, how much accounting do they need to know to do well as a hedge fund manager? I hope it's a lot, right? Because otherwise my students watching this video will be like, forget it. I'm just going to study art history or something.
Yeah, look, if your mom or dad is a hedge fund manager, then you can study art history and become a hedge fund manager. That's fine. But if, like most of us, you're not that fortunate, you're going to have to get there on talent. And I actually did not study accounting. I took a couple classes. I was not very good at them. And I quite frankly, I think I had bad teachers, which is unfortunate. Looking back on it now, I really wish I had studied more accounting, because it gives you such a larger tool set. And if you don't study accounting, you can still do things, right? You can still go into sales. You can even go into trading, but you're limited. And the bulk of the people I know who manage hedge funds, and it's not a ton, but they have very strong accounting backgrounds. My former partner, who was the senior partner in the fund, he has a very robust accounting and corporate finance background. And that gives him the ability to look at a company, go through their balance sheet, talk to the management, and then have a good understanding. Okay, this is a good company for these reasons. This is a bad company, or this is what the market's missing, etc. So, and it's not just because you're an accounting professor and I'm on your channel that I'm saying this. I genuinely think people should study accounting, even if you're not going to go into hedge funds. Like if you want to go into business, I think you have such a wide array of things that you can do with an accounting degree that you can't do with a business degree. It's like, if you were to draw a Venn diagram and you think of, okay, all the things I can do in business are this circle. Well, all the things I can do with an accounting degree encompass all of the business things plus other things.
Well, good. I didn't even pay you to say that. So thank you for
oh, wait,
promoting accounting.
That Venmo money just came through. Thanks, man.
Okay. Well, for every person that comes on to do a video with me, I really admire, including you. So I consider all of you all to be very successful individuals, and I hope my students can follow your footsteps. So, given, as I said, like you and all my the speakers I bring are successful individuals, could you give some tips for success to my students? What would you say would be your top 3 keys to success in career or in life?
Great question. Work hard. People will notice that. You might not get compensated for it, but people will notice that. And it's even in an area as lucrative and competitive as investment banking, it's very easy to see who's a hard worker. And that stands out. Second, network. The people who aren't hard workers, who are successful, are very good at networking. And I honestly am amazed at people who succeed in investment banking who genuinely don't know very much about investment banking, but they're just great at networking. And I think, wow, how did you get your job? You like know nothing about this business, but I know all of these people. It's like, okay, that's a genuine skill. So yeah, work hard, network. On the sort of professional side, on the personal side, I would just say always live below your means. And that's the advice I always give people, no matter how much you make. I mean, this wasn't something I had to deal with, but one of my former bosses was the head of investment banking for a big bank for all of Europe. And he would have, you basically get your bonuses in January, February, or March, sometime around there. And he would have employees who had a salary of kind of $200,000 and would get multi-million-dollar bonuses. And then in August, they would come to him to borrow money. And he would say, what do you mean? I just paid you $3.5 million in March. And they're like, yeah, I need some more cash. Can I borrow like $500,000 from you until the next bonus? And it's amazing. But, we see that here. I always contrast in class when I talk about personal finance, Kanye and Sean Combs, because obviously Kanye is very wealthy now, but before he blew through all of his money. Whereas Sean Combs was like very diligent about saving and investing and coming up with new ventures and stuff like that. Live below your means, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know how long things are going to last, the good times. And when they come to an end, you don't want to be sitting there going, oh, wow, I wasted all my money. I have friends who, like me, left the business around the same time, and they've had to go back to work, like, get real jobs, like 9-to-5 jobs, because they didn't save their money and they didn't invest it.
Well, thank you for sharing those tips. So for people watching this video, listen to Erik. You can be like him, surfing on the beach now and teaching for fun, and also doing volunteer work to help people get out of debt. So that's wonderful. Now, my last question for you is, I want to bring up your YouTube channel. I mean, you put a lot of time into doing all these great videos there to educate students about economics and all sorts of other great stuff. So could you talk a little bit about your YouTube channel? I'll also post the link to your channel in the video description below so they can check it out. And I encourage people to subscribe to it as well.
Yeah, thank you. I just started this a few months ago. I just had a lot of demand from students during my class. And then I'm still in touch with tons of students who have taken my class from as far back as 4 and 5 years ago. And something will happen, like the GameStop thing at the beginning of the year. And I literally had 15 former students reaching out to me. Hey, what's going on? Can you explain this, et cetera, et cetera. And on my channel, we had a 2-hour-long talk on GameStop. I don't consider them lectures because it's just kind of everyone coming in. And I brought on some guest speakers, some people I worked with who were in equity finance, and another guy who's at a hedge fund. And so it's kind of a mixed bag of topics on my channel, but I'm just responding to demand. And people will say, oh, we want to learn about economics, or we want to learn about personal finance, or here's a situation. We just talked about inflation a few weeks ago because that's in the news. And so I have a couple playlists, with a few major themes, but it's just there so that it's a reference. I try to keep the videos short, like 3 to 4 minutes, most of the, actual videos, because that's kind of the attention span that people have, and they can see them on Instagram or YouTube. But just, stuff to, I was never taught about personal finance. I had to learn on my own. And, I was in my 30s and making money, and I'm going, okay, well, what should I do here? I don't really know. Like, I have an MBA and stuff, but, I'm not really sure how to do this. So I feel badly for students nowadays who, come out of high school, don't have any personal finance education. And I teach at community colleges. So there are a lot of students who, come from very modest backgrounds, and the way the system is set up, you can easily take on $20, $50, $100,000 in debt, some for school, some for credit cards, some for auto loans. Next thing you know, you're 26, 28 years old, and you have a ton of debt. And you don't really know how you got into that situation. But, to me, that's servitude. Right? They've tightened up the bankruptcy laws about 15 years ago, so you can't just get all that stuff wiped out. And I think it's very unfair. And so I'm just trying to help people avoid that.
Thank you so much for coming today to do this. I mean, it's quite an honor for you to make time to do this. But I was going to mention to my viewers, check out his YouTube channel. For those of you who want to learn about personal finance and investments, Erik teaches at Santa Monica College and also El Camino College. I believe he teaches on ground as well as online classes. So if you were interested, sign up for his class, right? He's been there, he's done that, he's seen the world now. He's semi-retired as a young guy who surfs and gives back to the community. So I would encourage you to enroll. His classes fill up quickly, so sign up now, okay? So Erik, hey, thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you taking some time to bring me on.